Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy healthy start on this little bit later Sunday morning over here from nice and bright and sunny Helsinki, Finland. Got my morning walk in, so feeling good and plenty to discuss today, mostly with regard to the monthly closure that's coming up soon enough. So we're going to be going over a bit of a hopium case on this one, but also what's perhaps a little bit more statistically relevant and likely to happen, and some big things to be looking out for today's closure, and then of course again on, I believe it's either Saturday or Sunday for the monthly closure as well. Anyways, with that in mind, I should humbly request that if you do find this content valuable, the best way to kind of give back in that format is to simply like the video. It's also free to do, and if you desire at the end of the video, if you don't like it because of the tone, then just click the dislike button, maybe even twice. Anyways, on top of that, I should also let you know on Instagram there's like an epidemic of scammers impersonating myself. I can assure you that's not me. If it's not coming from the account that is in the link in the description below, then I can assure you it is not me, and I'm probably not going to message you anyways because I am a little bit too busy at the moment to begin with. And also, if you do end up trolling the scammers, definitely send me a screenshot because that is absolutely hilarious, and I'll repost it on my Instagram as well because that's the game right now. Other than that, should let you know about the old Bybit shill. They got $4,000 deposit bonus. Cool, that's good on that, and there's a link description below as well. And let's just jump into it right now. So let's start off first a little bit with the hopium. Also on the short-term timeframes, I want to follow up on that as well. We said yesterday that hey, Bitcoin probably putting in a short-term bounce off this region. I'd still be looking for an overall range throughout the weekend, and then probably resolution Monday. I think a little bit more likely actually Tuesday within that regard for like the big move. We have a big catalyst coming up this week, or multiple catalysts, as there are big stocks, especially in the tech sector, having their earnings report Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe it is. So very, very likely some volatility around that time. Until then, I imagine more or less range bound. Anyways, in this case, I actually am probably looking for another short-term bounce here, as Bitcoin does have negative short-term rates. In fact, on the funny rates right here on the Krown trading application, again, you can find this in links in the description below, and it is 100%, or this feature is free. Of course, we do actually see the lowest negative funny rate basically going back to January. We saw a few other spikes to the downside there, obviously, but in this case, this is like the first, or the biggest negative read that we've seen on the daily feed for what it's worth. And, negative 0.01%. That is significant, obviously. So shorts are paying to hold their positions. And, well, right now it's not a humongous deal because they're, more or less in profit. But ultimately, we need to put this within the context of the last 24 hours with that data. And if we go over here, you'll notice that the open interest has been slowly kind of grinding up here. So theoretically, in the short term, we do have a bit of over-aggressive, overzealous shorts perhaps, which can very easily be squeezed, as typically those people are probably over leveraged, especially if they're gambling trading over the weekend. But overall, this is all very, 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 very shallow and short-term stuff. So with that in mind, let's go into the ranges over here, and it's basically the same thing as before, right? If we do look at this from a Fibonacci standpoint, lines up pretty damn well with just nice and natural horizontals. Short-term range between about 39.2 to the downside versus about 40,500 to the upside. Anything between there is irrelevant. But yeah, I do suspect that Bitcoin probably gives another try to the upside. Maybe a little bit above 40,000 bucks is certainly fair game. With that in mind, or essentially why am I basing that off of? Well, as we do see over here with our stochastic momentum on the short-term timeframes, not going to take too much to turn a lot of these ones up, as we do see the correction kind of play out. So 6 hour right here will turn up officially for the first time in a while with any sort of a closure above 39.6, which Bitcoin's currently about 150 bucks above right now, which is a sneeze. 4 hour is going to be showing upside. Again, a corrective signal as we identified yesterday, so still more or less rangy. As long as Bitcoin's above 39,330, the 3 hour, which I also quite like, is going to be showing upside above 39.5, and hourly is probably flippy floppy, but also up if I had to guess. Yes, indeed it is 39.5. So 39.5 actually showing up as a lot of pivots for the short-term timeframes. Ultimately, as long as Bitcoin's above there, probably does give another try up above 40,000 bucks. I think anywhere around 40,500 is completely fair game. Wouldn't really be asking for too much. And then I'll just be looking at it in the same way as yesterday, range resolutions here. So if you do see a closure, especially on like a 4 hour above the 382, I would be looking for the next move up somewhere around the 0.5. And then, same thing from there, very likely a short-term pullback plus any sort of a closure above. And then I look for the 41,500-ish region, which is 618 on a bearish Trisman right here. Keep in mind, however, if I am going to provide a bit of hopium here, I want to be very deliberately clear that, I don't think this is very likely to happen. But hey, the first sort of major warning warning signals that Bitcoin is going to potentially be putting in some like major, mega, perhaps even macro bear trap is first and foremost, need to see a move back above the 618 Fibonacci retracement. In this case, that drastically increases the probabilities that this one does rally back up towards, not yesterday's, but last week's high, just around $43,000. So if Bitcoin were to close even a 4-hour dildo above 41.5, yeah, I do look for the next $1,500 move somewhere right around here. And then if we do even, realistically trade above last week's high, which keep in mind that CME already kind of confirmed its weekly closure. Well, what do we have right here? We do have a bit, do you want to call it a doji? Do you want to call it a hammer? I don't care what you call it, but trading back above that high would very likely solidify this as another local low. And because it would be confirmed as a local low, especially on a closure, but even on just trading above, probably good enough in this case to be fair. This would be 1, 2, 3 higher lows right here. And do we have hidden bullish evidence? No, we don't, but we're just going to ignore that fact for a second. But that also be coming on very, very low volatility. So not only would you have a slew of higher lows, but you'd very likely be popping back up towards those prior highs in the upper 40s. So that would start to bring into question, hey, if Bitcoin closes above this region right here, or even just trades above the late March highs, which was about 48.5 or so on CME, then that would solidify this as, in my opinion, a macro base with big targets to the upside. So this is kind of the hopium for right now. And to be fair, targets up, somewhere around $60,000 would be very much relevant. Why is that? That is simply because right on over here on this chart, we are seeing yet again another one of these signals with the daily BBWP incredibly low, representing volatility over here. We're actually seeing the lowest levels for the longest time since basically January. And anytime that we have seen within the single digits or so, the expansion phase from that has led to about a 20% move on average. Some cases a little bit more, some cases slightly less. I wouldn't necessarily give like a time frame on that. If we were to take an average, probably be around like 2 weeks if I had to guess, but I don't really trust it all that much, to be quite frank with you. But ultimately, this has been very, very consistent. If you've been on this channel, even for like the past few weeks, you just saw another one of these right on over here in early April. And, I was getting for whatever reason, I get a lot of shit when I talk about statistics and whatnot, maybe because this one happened to the downside, but happened right in front of your very faces, and it's going to very, very likely be happening again. So, if Bitcoin were to do that and even take out the short-term time frame range, which is 41.5 or so, or I guess it's more like medium-term time frame range, basically trade above last week's high especially, we'd see daily stochastic momentum remain to the upside, which will be happening as long as Bitcoin is above 40,200. Right now, Bitcoin obviously not above that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a move short term around that region. So does offer up the possibilities of that. The reason why I'm pointing this out though is because if we do see those resolutions, the 20% move based off of an expansion phase from basically $40,000 would be around 48. So that obviously be very, very much relevant for the higher term timeframes, because then that can bleed into the 5-day signals that we do have over here that have still not gone away, which would be another probably 20% move on top of that, which is still looking for resolution as we do identify 5-day BBWP as extreme lows, and it hasn't seen expansion just yet, although we're getting yet again another tick up right here, so probably seeing resolution this week, to be fair. But as long as Bitcoin's below especially 40,000, or for the love of God 40,200 for today, probabilities and likelihood do remain to the downside on a resolution here. Probably later into this week. Anyways, in this case, that's also where I'm getting that sort of $60,000 target from, because a 45% move from this area right here, if it does come to the upside, which again, quite unlikely for right now, especially as long as you're below 46, let alone fucking 40,200 for the love of God, that would put Bitcoin at around 59 to low 60s or so. By contrast to the downside, which we'll focus on in just a second here, that would put Bitcoin at around 25 to 24,000 bucks. All right, cool. So maybe not so cool. What else do we have for the hopium? We'll leave it right there. Yeah, we'll leave it right there. There's one other thing. The other thing that I could point out for hopium is on this chart, daily Bollinger Bands. When you'll notice that when they expand extremely large, or when they just expand like an extreme amount, the first tick on these come ups right here. So in this case, right here, right here, right here, and perhaps even right here, where you do see that the slope of the Bollinger Band on the bottom side changes from like basically vertical to just 1 degree less. Traditionally speaking, the lows have been in. And to be fair, we got that a long time ago, actually. So that would also be on the Hopium side as well. I can maybe bring up one last thing over here for the Hopium. Well, no, we won't get into that right now. I don't want this to get too long here. But there is another big thing for the Hopium case. Anyways, like I said, though, as long as Bitcoin's kind of, especially below even the daily resolution point for this, probabilities remain to the downside. Now, the daily still has momentum on this chart for that 20% move or so. Has been correct on the expansion for about 8 of the last 10 iterations, as I count them out right here. So pretty damn good, to be fair. But a lot of that move typically done within that first leg. So I would say that it's probably going to happen, rather fast once it gets going. Anyways, until then, it's still the waiting game, and it's required a lot of patience, and fair enough. Anyways, okay, so what else do we want to get into? Do we want to address Dixie? I can just briefly go over to Dixie over here. Again, with Dixie, I was actually looking for a pullback at the end of this week. We initially got a little bit of the pullback that I was looking for, and then I was looking for it to come back down. It's definitely wrong on that one, and I do expect this to actually trade up here, probably around 102 to maybe even 103, actually. In fact, might even be a little bit more likely around 103, and that's probably where I do look for the pullback from. So that'd obviously be a little bit more on the downside overall, but after that pullback does come from this region right here, or very likely comes from this region right here, well, Bitcoin probably puts in a low. The problem is, how far down is Bitcoin before that happens? I mean, theoretically, it could be from where we're at right now, or it could be from the much lower 30s. Anyways, with that in mind, let's now talk about, well, what I think is a little bit more likely to happen. So I want to bring back this chart right here to address the monthly closure. Okay, so this chart has not gone away. It's been relevant for about half a year now, and I suspect that it's going to be relevant until it's not. And in this case, it's a very simplistic chart that we're going to match up with a few other things as well. Now, actually, before we get into that, I should address the short-term timeframes. So let's go back on over here. Short-term timeframes, resolution of the downside is the same criteria as before, right? Any sort of a 4-hour closure below about 39, or if you want to be super exact, like 39 and change, I guess like 39,100, 39,200. Let's just say 39,100, or just make it nice and round and easy at 39 even. Then I would be looking for Bitcoin to take the next leg down somewhere between about 37 to 37.5. Probably another short-term bounce right there. Maybe a low, but risk still would be lower, obviously, as all of the higher term time frames start to turn against it. Anyways, go back on over here, and this is the monthly chart. So this one's relevant for the end of this month, which, let me just double check, is going to be next Saturday. So this coming Saturday. Anyways, this chart we've pulled up millions of time. It's the monthly MACD chart. Anytime that we've seen the monthly MACD cross the downside, it's always led towards a move down every time, which has only been 3 in the past. So that's not necessarily a trend, that is a trend, but it's not necessarily like heavily tested, if you will. But it has led down towards a test towards that green moving average right here, which is a 55 exponential. Also, we can combine this with the PMR, losing the moving average on it. Not as many tests right there, but is below it as well, which is not the best sign. And then the next big thing that we have going on, because obviously the monthly MACD has already crossed the downside, but the next big thing that we do have going on here is that in the past, once we've run the monthly MACD cross the downside, as represented by these green vertical bars, the next closure below the white 20 simple, as you see over here in 2014, was when things really started to accelerate to the downside. So from there, a few months and then down to the 55. Then the next one in 2018 right here, again, diddles, what the fuck? Moves along the white 20 simple, closes below it ever so slightly in October, and then boom, down, finally slow a couple months later. Same thing over here, although this one kind of happened all in one fell swoop in the Rona dump in 2020. But again, the monthly MACD notified you of that 2 months earlier, actually, in hindsight. And then also we could bring up the accumulation distribution indicator, but man, I'm not, well, it's also not, well, we'll save that one for later. Same thing over here, though. This one actually even wicks below the 55. But generally speaking, finds its lows around there. So generally well tested, I would say. Anyways, in this case, the monthly is actually below that $40,000 number, which is where the 20 simple is. It's technically speaking at 40,200. I would go as far to say that if Bitcoin closed anywhere below 40,000 bucks, very likely to see a few stops along the way, but probably, all the way down around there towards $25,000, which is in line with the projections from what this historical chart would be representing over here. Again, the volatility versus momentum chart, of which I'll go over this one last time. The 5-day BBWP being in the teens, or especially lower than that, for the past few years. And again, you can go back even further than this. Anytime that we have seen expansion from that has led to about a 45% increase or decrease from that expansion level. We're getting another uptick right here if we zero in on it. So this one's going to get another tick, not tonight, but tomorrow night. So very likely looking for a resolution, later this coming week. And that's a big one. Now 45% has been the average move, and, to the upside, we already went over that. So there's your hopium, like about $60,000, and probably upwards and onwards from there. To the downside, about $24,000 to $25,000. Is that directly in line with the 55 right here? 24,500, right fucking smack dab in the middle, huh? And then on top of that, for right now, the 5 days stochastic momentum, anytime that we've seen it have a direction alongside that first leg of volatility expansion, which again, we have not seen just yet. It's very, very close though. That has gone the correct direction every time. At least for the last 6 iterations. And again, we could backtest it more than that, but I suspect that this video is already long enough. Anyways, in this case, I highlighted this number over here. As long as Bitcoin's below 46,100, that does remain with downside pressure. On top of that, the weekly closing today actually will turn down below 38.6, and that number will actually go up as soon as this weekly closes. So that's a little bit more on the concerning side as well. So I'd go as far to say that, even in this next 24-hour session, if we see a closure below about $40,000, there's going to be your first warning signal for some potential destruction for this week to come. Again, referencing this chart right here. Obviously, that can have bleed on over effects into the next 5-day expansion, which is actually going to happen after Monday, most likely. And then that can have, bleed on over effects into the monthly chart. So if those criteria are met, one by one, I do feel like it's very important to express that there's significant downside risk, as we've been saying on this channel for a while now. But for right now, the hopium is still alive. We could still very easily see this volatility expansion to the upside. But as this month kind of draws closer and closer to a close, that sort of window of hope, if you will, or hopium, is going to start to close. Also, on top of that, I just want to address this yet again. Weekly over here, this signal really hasn't gone away. Hidden bearish divergence on the weekly RSI. We got the easy move on that back down to weekly range lows. If this one does play out more, which potentially will with weekly volatility reads this low, as that can really get accelerated. Very likely looking at mid to probably around $33,000 to $35,000 in the next couple weeks if that does happen. So again, hopium is something like this, the red line right here. Let me just get rid of this for the time being. Can I? Fuck it. All right, we'll just get rid of it. Something like this. As long as Bitcoin's above this region, hey, you still have your higher lows and back above last week's high. That's where, all of these volatility expansions start to look a lot better for the boo laws and really start to favor the boo laws in contrast to what we're seeing right now. But again, as long as these conditions are met, it is more likely to see downside. Short term up, short term probably bounces here, but I think that's probably a good place to leave it. Otherwise, I'll keep on repeating myself. I guess the other hopium is that 2-day stochastic momentum will turn up above 39,350, which Bitcoin's currently $400 above. And the last few times that we've seen it this low have been, some nice lows. That'd be your, let me actually mark these off. 27th of November and early January. Let's see how these did. Terrible and terrible again. Yeah, so maybe not. Well, fair enough. Again, just be aware wherever those pain points are. I think it's okay to have hopium until those, things are completely nullified, but just be aware of, of kind of what's at stake here. So with all of that said, probably, and again, this signal over here plays out, typically speaking, towards its final target over the next 40-ish days. So probably looking by June, either 60,000 or 25,000 bucks. Anyways, with that said, I want to wish you well. Take care and see you hopefully soon.